The song or the album? Because New Pangaea, to me, it's kind of a place. It's like a brigadoon. But it's a state of mind, you know? Remember when I first came down here, it's like I arrived at Pangaea. And then, you know, there's kind of this core group of people, and then all of a sudden they started going away. It was like the swamp was breaking apart and they were drifting off. I'm like, where are you going? And they were going off to, I don't know, wherever they went. That became their Pangaea. And I was left in this new Pangaea spreading out, and, you know, continental drift, the people that I associated with the place so deeply left. And Pangaea, it's a trying to, you know, or I don't know, I think the term works in a lot of levels. Is it some aspirational place? I mean, Pangaea was the original natural state, the supercontinents, 700 million years ago. You know, nature reigned and everything was unified, almost like a utopian Garden of Eden. And then at some part it all started spreading apart, you know, and that's gone forever, right? Well, maybe not. Maybe there's a new Pangaea out there. You just don't know. And, you know, it's kind of a longing, new Pangaea, for the past. But hope, you know, for the future, that it can all reform. And I think about Grimes' album. I didn't really know her as an artist, and then she had this new album, Miss Anthropocene. She's the goddess of climate change, and I thought, wow, what an interesting premise to do an album on. Of course, her songs, you know, as artists do it, they're kind of tangentially tease with that theme, you know, sometimes at a worldly, sometimes at a personal level, and ways that you wouldn't expect. And I think, you know, I thought New Pangaea was kind of a spin on that I thought that was kind of a bold, empowering way to look at climate change. But New Pangaea, it's the Anthropocene, you know, is the past, 2,000 years, how humans have altered the geology, atmosphere, you know, biota, the flora and fauna and ecoscapes, and kind of this turned it the past 2,000 years into this deep geologic imprint on the earth, you know, and I think New Pangaea is this idea that, well, no matter what we do, the earth is going to survive, you know, or, you know, at a personal level, well, even before that, how do you name something? The name New Pangaea just kind of hopped in my head, and I think it worked at a couple levels. I remember my youngest son, he has a knack at naming Muscovy ducks. Just the other day, he saw one and he said, "That's Patricia." And we all looked at it and we're like, of course, that's Patricia. It could be no other name. And it started years before that. We're kind of, Muscovies are kind of an ugly duck, but we started to bond with him. And I think we bonded with him when we named, he saw one of the ducks and he named the duck Gerald. Gerald was then, had a bunch of chicks, but so it was not a male but a female duck, but we kept it Gerald, and there was no other name that fit. And I think this New Pangaea just was the same way. This album had to be that. And the New Pangaea, my son also years ago used to talk about New Texas. I thought, that sounds like an interesting place. It sounds bright and shiny, you know. Old Florida, New Florida has kind of a bad connotation that, it's just the sardine can of development, rooftop on rooftop, on what used to be little coastal hamlets. And old Florida has that, mystique. And where I work in the swamp, it's kind of a slice of old Florida that's been preserved in time. Kind of like, a new Pangaea, right? Reclaiming nature. And that's what the nature folk movement's all about, is kind of celebrating the good deeds of others around the campfire, trying to reclaim that Pangaean state. But I go back to New Texas, and to me it always sounded like such a bright and shiny place. And I think New Pangaea is that. It's a bright and shiny place, a state of mind, this hopeful aspiration that it's out there. It's right around the corner. And, every song on this album is a farewell song. It is a cascade of farewells. And you think about that, you're at a personal level, if you're so lucky you're born into a family that is happy, that's your Pangaea. And as you age and get older and grow, it starts to break apart and drift apart. Relationships change, people pass on, and that bedrock of Pangaea just spreads out, and you always, hold out that promise, the new Pangaea. And then those islands, that island I found myself on at some point, you make it into a new Pangaea, your own family, and that, if you're so lucky, and your family, your kids, that's their Pangaea. And then they grow, and that starts to split apart, and it's this constant cascade of farewells. And I think that's what the name comes from. And certainly the album, that nature shanty, folk nature shanty tradition of reclaiming nature, celebrating the good deeds of people, doing their part to form these, to protect these natural areas and reclaim it, where we can, restore that new Pangaean state. And the song, so that's the album, and the song took originally I thought it was going to be a kind of a fun song. Really all the other songs I'd written years ago, Marsha in 1999. And the album itself, it just snapped together like a puzzle. Don't ask me how. If you listen to the album, you'll understand how. It took about 2 or 3 months to record the songs and do all the videos. Even less than that, with really the only new addition, New Pangaea, and that was just the names just popped in my head, and I knew I needed to do a song. And writing a song, you can either talk about it or do it. And by the time I hopped on the horse to do it, events had changed. There was kind of a personal event in my life that affected, it was one of those relationships back in Pangaea, and, me kind of going back in this song and promising, that person that, new Pangaea, it's better days are ahead, and kind of expresses a deep longing for the past, but a promise that the best days are still ahead. And I think it still has that element. It's a fully rounded emotional song. I mean, I was laughing and crying when I was singing and writing it, and I think the video ties it together. It's told through the perspective of my brother and my first car, 1974 Ford Elite. And, what more not a powerful statement than your first car would say to you. So, the song and the album, is it a place, a state of mind? Is it the past, New Pangaea? Is it kind of this false promise of a Brigadoon that doesn't exist? Or I think for me it goes back to the nature folk tradition of, whenever you explain a song, its roots are just so deep, and there's always a story behind it. And the story behind it is as interesting and revealing as the song itself. And they always say, I'll let the viewer or the listener interpret the song, but everybody should have a say in whatever that song is. And I'm not saying what I'm saying is right, but that's kind of what was on my mind. And there's kind of this, I have trouble sometimes. Whenever I explain anything, I have to go back to Pangaea. I start with Pangaea. How can you possibly explain this song without going all the way back to Pangaea? And that's what I find myself kind of constantly doing. So it's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek in there that, people are always rescuing me from Pangaea, but sometimes I, just can't help myself and I run back in. And when you find those fertile valleys and the breathtaking views, it's just always worth it. It's just always worth it and so enlightening. So, yeah, New Pangaea. This album, it snapped together, and the song did too. I knew I had to go on the end of the song, just like a Bob Dylan, Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands, or, Desolation Row, or, whatever kind of big song he puts at the end. I wanted this to kind of be the same. And the song is a cascade of farewell. The song is a cascade of farewells, and the album is too. And I just thought the title worked. And the whole album, it's about brotherhood, brotherhood and sisterhood among us, and with that very nostalgic bent. But nostalgia is driven by an idea that the future can be reclaimed. So I think it's all in there, and I think it really kind of ties it all together. New Pangaea.